Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today on this author interview with Maya Ameyaw, the author of When It All Syncs Up, which came out Monday, right?
On Tuesday.
Tuesday. That is so crazy. Yes, 2 days ago. In my head, I don't know what today is. I was like, 2 days ago, that's Monday. It's not, it's Thursday today. Um, what is time? But thank y'all for joining us. We're gonna try to keep it tight. The real ones know that I'm prone to ramble. So I have very specific questions that I have written down. So thank y'all for watching on the replay. If you are, make sure to hit that like button, share this interview widely, make sure to add When It All Syncs Up on Goodreads and when whatever Storygraph, whatever your reading record site is, make sure to add When It All Syncs Up on there and to give it a review when you're done. And I promise I'm going to let Maya get a word in edgewise in a second. But first, I'm going to introduce her in case y'all are like, I've seen her beautiful face, but I don't necessarily know a lot about her. So a brief intro right from her website. If you haven't checked out her website, definitely go do that. It's so beautiful. So Maya Ameyaw was born and raised in Toronto by a family of voracious readers in a cozy little house bursting with books. A former bookseller, she currently works as a community arts writing group facilitator. In her free time, she interviews writers about their journeys toward publication for her blog and YouTube channel. Go check it out. Maya has edited several mental health themed anthologies for youth and adults with funding from the Toronto Arts Council. A deleted excerpt of her upcoming novel, which we will mention very briefly at the end, is featured in the anthology Brilliance is the Clothing I Wear. What a title. Her contemporary YA debut, When It All Syncs Up, has been awarded grants by the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Canada Council for the Arts. She is represented by Leslie Sabga and Julie Gwynn of the Seymour Agency. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to hop right. And I see people drifting in the comments. Hello. Thanks for coming. Okay. So, first question, just a little to warm us up. Your writing journey in 3 words.
Okay. Let me see. Probably solitary. And then I guess it's going to be like a journey in 3 words. So solitary, community, and I would say quick would probably be the last one.
Really? Solitary, community, and quick. Those are sort of polarizing. Like solitary and community are opposite of each other. And then quick, which is the opposite of what we hear from a lot of debut authors. That, oh, it took me so long. But you're saying quick.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it's kind of interesting because like as a whole, the journey wasn't quick, but towards the end, it kind of sped up in terms of like what happened with this book in particular. So I started writing When It All Syncs Up like over a decade ago, and I was kind of just doing it on my own. I didn't really have betas or critique partners. It was kind of something I would do in my spare time after work, and I wasn't really spending a lot of time on it. And then in 2020, I started working from home, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to start talking to more writers, start connecting with people on Twitter. And that's when my community kind of came together in terms of connecting with writers on like a querying path. So that was a big thing for me of like being able to kind of feel more connected to writers and feel more motivated. And that's when kind of I was able to get a lot more drafts done and kind of do a lot more polishing on this manuscript before I started querying. And then when I did start querying, it was a pretty quick process. I think it was just like things kind of aligned and I was in the right place at the right time in terms of like getting agent interest while I was querying. And then when I was on sub, it was a fairly quick process as well.
Okay. Wow. And it's so I mean, surreal isn't the word, but it's just really cool to see because I remember because we're mutuals on Twitter, and that was before even you got signed. So I remember just like seeing you on Twitter, like in the different like book Twitter pockets or writing Twitter pockets. And I remember when you announced that you had an agent. I remember when you announced that your book had been picked up, and when all of these different milestones. So it's so cool, first of all, to like virtually meet you and put a face to the little picture on the internet, but also to just hear you speak more about the journey that I've mostly just seen in like bursts of posts or whatever. And to offer that encouragement. That's what we usually hear, but I think the community part is super important. That writing can be isolating before and after anything, in my opinion, because writing alone is sort of like, you can't really write while you're talking to people in the moment. So there are solitary parts of it, but definitely having that community to hold you accountable to your writing goals, or to say like, hey, did you write today? Or just to talk to people about other books that are really spurring you on, giving you good ideas. Like that community part is something that for me is super important, that I often hear other writers say like, yeah, my community, when I found my community, that was a new era in my writing, even before the agent. So as you're reflecting on your writing journey, if you had to articulate the biggest gratitude of that journey and the biggest regret, they can be two different things. Have you thought about that? Are there any parts where you're like, this was the best part, or this was something I wish I would have done differently or thought about differently?
I feel like the thing I have the most gratitude for is definitely the amount of support that I've gotten from like the beginning. As soon as I started reaching out and finding that community, and like you said, like I would see you sometimes on Twitter, and then that's how I discovered your channel. And it's such a great way to, like put a full person behind just like the little avatar you see and like their tweets, and then you can kind of like get a sense of like who people actually are and a lot about their experiences. So being able to just like see in like little like bursts of just like, okay, maybe I read an interview with someone, or I saw an interview with someone and they had great advice, or they had gone through something that was similar to something that I'd gone through. That's the stuff that I'm like most grateful for, because I feel like all of the stuff I learned being able to like connect with other people and be like, oh, okay, this is what this person did and they've been through the same thing. It's just like irreplaceable, that type of gratitude I have for that. I would say my biggest regret is probably just like isolating myself so much before that, because I was kind of like, I was like, oh, this is something I have to do on my own. And then when I finally was like, okay, let me just start reaching out to people, because I had always told myself like, oh, I'm going to start doing like pitch competitions, but I'm not ready yet. And then I finally just did it. So.
Yeah. And pitch competitions are not what they used to be. I mean, they're they had an era. They absolutely had an era. And now they're just not what they used to be. I've heard that like agents are kind of over it, like they're not necessarily participating as much, and there's some agent frustration that like, oh, I'll see a really polished tweet and then I get the sample pages and it's not as polished as the tweet was. All sorts of things. I hadn't planned to ask this question, but I always like to start book like interviews with like just the writing and the craft of it. And there's tea to be had. What do you think about the rise and the fall of the Twitter pitch era?
So I was definitely came late to the party. Like I only started doing pitch contests in like late 2020. I'd heard about them because I was like checking out different podcasts where authors said that's how they kind of got their start. So that's why I was like, okay, let me look into this. But I feel as if, I guess there is some fatigue from agents, but I feel like as much as you can have like a really polished tweet pitch, you can have a really polished email query letter, and then the actual pages don't match up as well. So I think that it might not have to do so much with the quality of work, because I think it's like no matter the medium, as long as it gets to an agent and they see that there's work that backs it up, that's good. I just think that pitch contests are hard to run and make sure that they're equitably run. Same with mentorship programs, which kind of go hand in hand. So it's just really a hard thing to manage. And a lot of people who are managing these things are volunteers, and it takes a lot of time and energy. So I really admire the time and energy people are putting into it. But I understand, I think that some that have closed down recently, they said that like the people running them didn't have the energy to do it anymore. It was just too much. So I think that's probably just the burnout that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. And that, because I also came sort of late to the party of like Twitch of pitch competitions. And it was around 2020, or dare I even say like 2021. But what I think is encouraging is like we see books that came from Twitter pitch competitions, like Wings of Ebony by JL, Beasts of Prey by Ayana Gray. Like we see these really, really amazing books come from authors that got agents from pitch competitions. But then we also see books like Raybearer by Jordan Fueco, like The Gilded One by Nami Four. And I don't think that those writers got their agents from pitch competitions. And those books are amazing, right? And so like, even to your point, it doesn't necessarily matter how you get the agent or how you approach them. There are plenty of writers, most writers, who got their agent from cold querying when a agent was open. And so that is still the tried and true method. And also just the joy of not being rushed. Like I could not tell you, actually I can tell you, 2 years in a row, I got tendonitis in both of my wrists from being like, oh, Pit Mat is coming up, the deadline is December, whatever, and just working on the manuscript, working on the pitch, working on the query letter, like doing all of these things for this particular deadline, as opposed to like a one hard deadline, as opposed to like, oh, this person is open for queries for now. And I can just work with the goal of getting in before they say I'm closed, right? Like there's also just different levels of stress. And I don't miss the stress of trying to hit the day deadline, or even the hour, and those hours in a day deadline to make sure everything is ready. I literally hurt myself 2 years in a row. So yes, retweet. It just make sure it's polished and ready. Cold query is still a fine way to get an agent. That's mostly how it goes. But speaking of queries, was When It All Syncs Up, was that the first book that you queried with an agent for?
Yeah, sorry. It actually was the first book that I ever queried. I've written a few books in the past, and I kind of just shelved them. I decided they weren't really ready to be queried. And then also like developing my own revision process, because I did enter mentorship programs, but I didn't get into any. So kind of like realizing, yeah. So figuring out how to be your own mentor and like being like, okay, is my query and is my story actually ready to go to an agent? It's a really hard process to figure out for yourself. So that was kind of like the barrier that I had on previous books, but I really put the extra time and energy into preparing When It All Syncs Up. And that's why I decided to make it the first book that I ever queried.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, same. I applied to so many, because Pitch Wars is like the mentorship half of Pit Mad. Applied to Pitch Wars, the Avengers of Color, like the author mentor match, the usual suspects. I lied, I did do the We Need Diverse Books once, but I remember feeling very discouraged and downtrodden until I did get into the We Need Diverse Books revision workshop. It wasn't really mentorship, it was a revision workshop. And it was difficult to navigate, essentially being your own mentor, because I'd also started writing a book when I was 16, stopped for a long time. It was about 2020 when I went back to it and was like, for my mental health, I need to write. Let me reinvest in this book that I wrote when I was a teen, refurbish it, try again, and really like put my back into it this time with professional aspiration. But bumping up against that, well, professional aspiration means that you require professionalization, and that's hard to do alone when you're still in the aspiration process. Like you don't really know what it means to be professionalized as a writer. How did you navigate mentoring yourself and getting to a point where you were like, yes, this is ready to query? Like, did you feel like it was when it was perfect? Like, what were the parameters for you mentoring yourself and you feeling like it was ready for the querying process?
So it was around the same time that I started actually reaching out and getting betas and critique partners. So kind of like reading other people's work and then seeing like, okay, do I feel like we're a match in terms of like, are we at the same place in terms of our writing, I wouldn't say skill, but just like the level that we're at, and do we feel like if you're reading stuff by other people that's in a similar genre to you, age category, do you feel like it is like in the same area and you feel like it's like, okay, this sounds polished? If you can think that someone else's work sounds polished, it helps you kind of be able to see your own work as polished as well. I think that helped a lot. And then also just like I decided to do my own way of trying to find mentors. Like my friend Louisa Onome, she was debuting around the time that I was querying. So I just kind of checked in with her and was able to like get her feedback. And she really helped me a lot to like help me determine if I was ready to query.
Yeah. Yes. That was probably the scariest part of my writing journey to date, is you do all the mentorship you can of yourself by comparing to peers, but there is a point where you need someone who is not at your same point in the journey. And that forced me to network. Maya, that was probably the scariest part of my journey, even beyond like querying, because I don't really know you. I'm just sending it into your inbox. I'm not asking to be your friend. It's a professional relationship. But when I'm asking someone who's ahead of me in the journey to reach back and ask a question and or offer some advice, like that for me just felt so petrifying, because I was like, what if they think I'm like fangirling or trying to at least offer, like it was just all the imposter syndrome came out to play. So, and that was difficult to overcome. Luckily, the authors that I asked were super nice and available and da. But getting to the point where I felt allowed to reach out, especially because it wasn't in a formal mentorship program, it was a DM or something, right? So that was the hardest part. Yeah. That was the hardest part.
Yeah, I totally get it. Like, I feel like I was also terrified. Thankfully, I knew Louisa in real life, so it wasn't just like me like sliding into her DMs. And I did actually even ask like experienced authors, help with like my my pitches on Twitter and stuff. And I think I kind of lucked out because there was like in the summer of 2020, there were a lot of authors that said that they wanted to help Black authors. So that's when I was like, okay, let me try and talk to this person, since they did publicly say that they wanted to help. So that helped a little bit.
Yeah, the timing of 2020. I mean, we don't want any events that precipitate that sort of national movement again, but yeah, the timing of 2020 did at least on the face of things, open doors for Black writers to ask for resources and ask for like material and like interpersonal resources, like mentorship. So yeah, ooh, what a time! But we're past that point, thank God. So from writing, we have to talk about this book specifically, When It All Syncs Up. So When It All Syncs Up in 3 words.
Okay, I'm going to say trauma, dancing, and healing.
Those are good. Those are good. Before we get deeper, in case anyone has not encountered this book, I'm not going to say shame on you because it's only 2 days out in the world. I am going to say, what are you waiting for now? So if you need a little bit more tantalizing, when 17-year-old Aisha begins to feel increasingly numb and isolated at a racially exclusionary ballet boarding school, her mental health suffers, leading to her first episode of dissociation. Shaken from the experience, she returns to her hometown of Toronto to visit her BFF, ex-dance partner, Neil. She discovers he's in a hospital with alcohol poisoning. which scared the crap out of me. Aisha resolves to stay with Neil to look out for his sobriety. She scores a spot at the diverse modern dance program at the public performing arts school that Neil attends. And when keeping an eye on his drinking becomes difficult, she enlists the help of Neil's cute musician friend, Ali. Spending more time with Ali, she's inspired by how he's so open about his past trauma through his music, allowing Aisha to let down her guard. This, along with creating her own choreography at school, becomes ways for her to process her abusive upbringing. But when Aisha's estranged mother shows up to force her back to ballet, she must fight for the freedom to dance to her own beat. Now, come on, somebody. If you don't want to read that, you're not listening with your ears. You're not listening with your ears. I'm about to get off script. I don't want to because I know we're on a time limit, but I just have to say, I read this book mostly on my Friday reading sprint. So people who come to those regularly saw my reactions in the live. And when I read that first, or even like the first few chapters, when she finds out Neil's in the hospital with alcohol poisoning, I said, y'all, the drama is already dramaing. The drama's already drowning. Then we meet Ollie with his little place. I'm like, and the swoons are already swooning. Come on now, somebody. If you need something other than the 3 words, other than the 3 paragraphs of description, let me tell you, there's also swoons. Ollie is so sweet and swoon worthy. If you are here for cinnamon buns, cinnamon rolls, whatever y'all call these little cute characters, it's him. It's him. Definitely. I heard in the streets they call him Ollie the cinnamon roll. I'm just saying. So I have to ask, I was listening to an IG live interview you did the other day, and you had mentioned some work in the mental health field. And I said, oh, research is paying off right now because that is not on your website. How did your work first of all, what was the work, if you can tell us? And then how did that work in the mental health field impact your representation of mental health in the book?
Well, firstly, I just want to say thank you for that shout out in terms of just like your enthusiasm for the book. And like, I really love hearing that, honestly. It's like, sometimes you just see the comments, but like actually hearing it, it's like, that's kind of exciting. So I really appreciate that. And yeah, I feel like in terms of like mental health, I've always been interested in youth mental health. In college, I started like a youth mental health like club. And we just kind of did like events where we're trying to like raise awareness about, staying well, because, when kids are in college, it's just kind of like a lot of kids have their first mental health issue in college just because of the stress. So it was kind of just like a community thing. And then after that, I worked as a counselor with a couple different Canadian mental health organizations, and was able to like do some work with kids where we were able to like create anthologies together, writing anthologies, and do different like workshops, and like have a couple different like open mic type of things. And it was really, really a beautiful experience, just being able to like, talk to kids about like what they're feeling. And like, I don't want to like expose my age, but like things are a lot different now than when I was a teenager, in terms of just like how amplified like and difficult it is to be a teen, and like especially with, like social media. Like it was nothing like how it is now, in terms of just like at every turn kids are being told they have to be a certain way, they have to look a certain way, and like the bullying is just like so out of control, even compared to like what I can imagine. So that's why I really wanted to kind of showcase that, how to kind of deal when things like that are happening to a teenager, and especially to like dealing with like anti-Blackness as a teenager, and how that can affect your mental health, and trying to like help, I don't know, just like teens who maybe are not in Aisha's situation see like, oh, okay, yeah, how isolating it can be, and maybe trying to like be a little bit kinder to people who are in those type of situations, because as a teenager, it's just like everything is so micro focused on ourselves, and not realizing that like, okay, yeah, kids will be kids, but also like because things are so hyper focused, there's a lot of emotions that can really make things go spiral in a really negative direction. And like just trying to be aware of that and, you know, help each other out and support each other was kind of like the main gist of what I wanted to get in there.
So and I thought about this when I watched your interview the other day. I was like, wait, did Maya insert herself in the book? Because listening to you talk, it sort of was giving the modern dance teacher whose name is escaping me, but the Neil, the teacher Hannah, that Neil was to, yeah, it was giving Hannah. I was like, okay, in touch with feelings, creating from feelings. Okay, Maya is Hannah. Now I got it. It was, your approach was very much reminiscent of, let's go back to the emotion. Let's not try to disconnect from that. So yeah, I'm hearing that again in your answer about mental health choices, which was one of the first things that gripped me, because we are seeing, I think, an increase in mental health representation in Kid Lit, which is amazing. I have not seen much representation of like dissociative incidents and that spectrum of mental health struggle. So when I read that, and just the way that it was so viscerally written in the first, this is like in the first chapter, y'all, I was like, whoa, this is something that I haven't seen. And then it not being normalized, because that's sort of can be the unintentional side effect of a wave of representation, is that it begins to normalize things that are really terrifying. And for Aisha to experience that dissociative, I feel like she's floating above her body and be like, this is not normal. I do not want to repeat this. I need to make a change. I really appreciated the realistic feelings of fear and not normalizing that sort of severe sort of mental incident. So yeah, I really appreciated it. And when you said that you had done work in mental health, I was like, it makes sense why we didn't just get the usual sort of representations on mental health, but a more like nuanced and thoughtful, there are other things. Disordered eating is there, but that's not the only thing that we can talk about concerning teens. There's also these other things like dissociation. So yeah, I really, really appreciated those representations for sure. And tangential or related, it depends on you, I suppose. But when I'm writing a story, there usually is, I call it like a tax that I have to pay to the story, where if I'm writing a story, as I am now, where the theme is forgiveness, I usually have to confront the things that I have not forgiven other people. If I'm writing a story about trust, I have to think about the ways that I trust or mistrust or can't trust or whatever. Was there that sort of thing? And when it all syncs up for you, was there sort of tax that you had to pay in order to be able to authentically bring forth this story?
I feel like there were a lot of difficult places I had to go, but I feel like thankfully I had already done a lot of work before writing the story personally that would even allow me to like go to those places, because I feel like if I hadn't done that, it would have just prevented me from being able to like go in there, like in terms of like you know, the bullying aspects that Aisha deals with. I wasn't in ballet, but I did have a similar experience of like being one of the only people of color in a school, and it being very isolating, and there and that type of thing. So being able to, when I was like, before I started writing a story, like go to therapy, you know, do all of that stuff. I think it really helped in terms of like me being ready to even, you know, get into this. And I think that it helped me to, like, it felt very therapeutic while writing as well. So thankfully it wasn't too painful. It was just kind of like, it was a relief to like finally, you know, speak on it in this way. So thankfully it wasn't like something where I felt like I had been drained. It felt kind of like, just, you know, yeah, healing.
I love that. And I need to work on doing that. Like, I mean, I think there are stories that I haven't started writing, because I know that while it's possible to deal with some things while writing, and writing can be therapeutic in that way, there are some stories that you can't even begin to write chapter 1 until you have already dealt with some of the seeds that are going to grow that story. So yeah, I have some stories on my horizon, and I'm like, just let me. That's going to be its own journey. And speaking of healing and therapy, because Aisha's kind of reluctant, has some trauma associated with therapy itself. And reading the scene, it's not really a spoiler, y'all, because the scene is so brief. When she finally does go to therapy, and before the book is over, because where she starts is not where she ends up in the middle or in the end. When she finally goes to the school therapist, I never went to my school counselor. Like my school counselors were sort of like they were. I only went to them for like academic counseling. Like it wasn't anything deeper than that. I don't know that I would have gone to them for anything. Like it didn't even occur to me to go to them for anything besides like help with college applications. Although I would see students who seemed like they had a rapport that went beyond the academic with the counselors, I just didn't have that experience. And so when I did, when there is that scene with Aisha and that counselor is so cold and so biased and so like not in tune with how this student is feeling, I was like, how did you get this job? But it was just so, I mean, I was demoralized along with Aisha. I'm like, is this the help or lack of help that our students are getting, that it takes everything in them to finally admit that they do need help? The first line of help that they have then makes them blessed. This is why I didn't want to come. Was there any, did you have experiences personally or professionally with school counselors? Like what made you depict the high school counselor in that way? Is there a deeper message or a warning or indictment that was behind that?
So personally, I didn't really think much about like going to a counselor when I was a kid either. I didn't think much about like mental health in general until like I got to college, right? Like it was just not talked about the way that it is now. So it didn't occur to me. So for me, it was kind of just like I wanted to kind of like showcase like what it's like when you are seeking, some type of medical professional help in any aspect if you happen to be a Black person, and why a lot of Black people are hesitant to go into those type of spaces because of those types of experiences. And so that like goes along with counseling. It can be this like regular physical health as well. So that was something that I wanted to show because it's just like very prevalent no matter like where you are in your life. So, and then how that can be like really detrimental if it's like this is the first time that she's trying to get help. So that's what made me want to show it in that way. Like I've been on both sides, so I've been like a counselor, I have gone to therapy, and there have been lots of different experiences. I've worked with counselors where I'm like, I know that maybe they started off where they wanted to help people, but somewhere along the way they got really jaded, and it really does not help the people who are struggling. So I just wanted to kind of like show all those different aspects.
For sure. And I don't know if you can see the YouTube comments that are there, but me and Devon are in agreement. That counselor scene, you did it too well. You did it too well, because I was reading it on my phone and I was like, let me not have to get a new phone because of this counselor who don't even know my first, last, or middle name. The way she was talking to our girl Aisha, I was like, watch your tone. First and foremost, watch your tone. Okay. It's giving, you don't really see her. Watch your tone when you're talking to Aisha. And I was really glad that, was it Ali that was waiting on her? It was Ali, right? I was waiting for her out. Or was it no?
It was Ollie.
Can we talk about? Can we talk? It was Ali. It was Ali the cinnamon roll, like his now official name. Devon and I have agreed it's official. Oh, Ollie, I was so glad, because when I wasn't sure if he was gonna be there because she kind of dismissed him. And I was like, I mean, cool, maybe you're gonna need support. And me and Ollie were on the same page, holding the line, standing in the gap. I was like, oh, Ollie, thank you. Thank you. We see Aisha. Okay, cool. So I was glad that he was out there waiting for her because it was such a disappointing moment for her. But for her to be able to fall back into human arms, to be able to hold someone's hand after someone who was supposed to hold her did not, I was really, really grateful for Ollie throughout throughout the novel, because I would have been really, I mean, I was worried about Aisha, period. But I would have been more worried and so much more stressed if Ali had not been there, because Neil was not always in a position to be a friend. But to be a good friend, what I think we get from the relationship between Aisha, Ali, and Neil is, I mean, first of all, the importance of having more than one friend, but also like, everyone is struggling with something, and you have to appreciate and have grace for the fact that sometimes other people's struggle are going to prevent them from helping you in your struggle, may even add to the difficulty of you managing your struggle. And there is some grace, some mutual grace that has to happen if y'all are going to be able to hold each other's friendship through this situation, because Neil just was not set up to be a good friend to Aisha or Ollie. Like, put them in really uncomfortable and just bad situations with these other friends, some of whom had already bullied Ollie last year. And at that point, I was like, Neil, you got one more time to put Ollie the cinnamon roll in a situation with these bullies to get handled by me. I'm an adult. I can't be out here fighting these kids. And so you can't be out here creating the scenario where I have to enter a fictional world just to pop someone in the forehead. It's not worth it. But Neil wasn't really seeing that because he was drunk off his shoes. And so I really love that sort of undergirding through line throughout of like, yes, trauma and healing, and also walking along someone who is not yet healed while you also have your own scars that you're going through. How did you go about crafting that relationship, or that sort of triangle of relationships and the tensions?
Yeah, so just like, I would just think back to teen years and how sometimes toxic friendships could be, and how kids just didn't know like how to be good supports to each other. And Neil, like you said, like, he wasn't in a position to be a good friend. He was trying though. And like, I feel like that was the through line with like his relationship with Aisha and with Ollie, is that like, they know he's going through a difficult time. They didn't give up on him. They just were just like, okay, like, we have to figure something out. But it was really just like being able to have that ability to, be forgiving to a certain point, like not letting yourself being taken advantage of, but also just like do your best to like see what other people are going through and like try and be there for them. Because it's, I feel like I witnessed people in those type of situations when I was in high school. I've seen it firsthand, so that was kind of like what I was going for. Yeah.
No, you did it really well. Like, the tension was there because I'm not a very forgiving person. People that traffic on this channel regularly know, not in like real life, like in books, my patience with these characters be real short. I'd be ready to 1-2 them with the fan. But I think it speaks volumes for how sympathetically and realistically you wrote Neil, that I was able to forgive him much. And much faster and much more than I have other characters in other books in the past, where I'm just like, you're just Aggie. Like, you yourself, you're the villain. It's you. We can now move on with that knowledge. But with Neil, I was never like, you're the villain. You're the drama. It was, you are one of many injured parties. And in being wounded by other people, not even in this room, you're bleeding all over other people who already have open wounds that can cause an infection. And you're going to have to take some responsibility should an infection ensue. But I was great. But the grace that existed between Ollie and Aisha and Neil was so moving, because I think that grace was the key antiseptic, if I can stretch this metaphor a little bit more. I think that grace was the key antiseptic that kept an infection from occurring. Even when Aisha was like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I need time and space. They still reconciled, even though it was difficult, because even when she does do the thing that I will not mention because spoilers, even when she does do this thing that Neil doesn't want her to do, she doesn't do it out of pettiness. She does it out of genuine concern. And I think that just the grace and the love, that love being the foundation for their actions really kept them together when other books would have made them just like fall apart and have like really uproarious drama where it's like, I mean, just because it's YA does not mean that it has to be a certain level of messy that YA seems to enjoy doing. Like we can do better than that because the truth is these young people do better than that. Like they are given really trash hands and they do the best they can. And the best they can does not always look like utter trash. It can be messy without being garbage. And I appreciated that you left room for the realism of the mess without it disintegrating into utter trash trauma drama where it's like, okay, well now we're in Pretty Little Liars and here we are. So I really appreciated that. And I loved to sort of transition because I could talk to Maya for 90 full minutes, but I told her 3:30 and it is 3:14. So I got to move with a hustle. I loved between Neil and Aisha specifically, because if I talk about Aisha and Ali, it's over. It's 3:45 for sure. Let's just say I love them. We understand that because we all love Cinnamon Rose. Who doesn't? And we move on. With Neil and Aisha, I loved how dance permeated their relationship. It was beautiful. I mean, I don't really know what other word I do. Rapturous, elegant, articulate. Like their relationship was so, sometimes you just gotta shout. It was just, I was reading it. I was like, man, it would only be because people know it's romance or it's fantasy. I'm getting into legal thrillers, but when you asked me to read this book, if I hadn't known you from Twitter before, I would have been like, I actually am unavailable. I'm so sorry. But I was like, let me do this because we love our Black women and I'm going to read this book. Not in my usual wheelhouse. But the honesty and the integrity that you wrote these characters with, the dignity that you wrote these young people with, that brought me in immediately. And then the way you held Aisha and Neil and allowed dance to really be their primary language for each other, even when words did fail. I think I was so stricken by the fact that they were articulate even without words, that when she was like, I don't want to talk to you, they could still dance together. And we as the reader even understood exactly where they were just by how they were dancing when they're working on that choreography for the showcase. That's modern choreography. And she continues to land facing away from him. And he has that moment that I felt when he like spun her around and he was like, let's end like this. Even if I have to continue to turn you. I just felt so much, not just the tension, but the pulling of, I just need you to forgive, and her being like, I don't think I'm ready, and him being like, well, let me help you, and her being like, I don't want your help. Like I felt that all in the choreography of the dance and the improvisation of the choreography was so beautiful, so articulate. Like I keep saying, like it just spoke volumes.
Thank you.
So well done. And so then I have to ask you, how did you go about deciding how you would depict the choreography? Because you don't just give us a list of dance moves. Like I lifted my leg in attitude and then I spun and then I was on point. Like there, some of that is sprinkled in, but the primary depiction of the choreography is really more emotional than it is giving us an understanding of what she's doing point by point in the choreography. How did you come to that? Was that how you originally thought? Did you have a couple of trials and errors? How did we end up with this version of the choreography?
Yeah, so the emotional journey that Neil and Aisha go through is definitely something that I worked very hard to develop and try to make sure that the things that you described, I'm just like, you got it. Like, thank you. I'm so glad. Because it's like trying to, like you said, like I'm showing choreography, but I'm also showing what is happening, what is their inner like emotional life, and how the things that have happened in the past are affecting them now and how they're processing it. So it was, there was lots of different drafts where I felt like, this isn't quite right. And then like tweaking it to make sure that I'm actually getting across like, okay, this is we don't just need to see like what they're doing, we need to see how they're feeling. And I feel like thankfully in the end that came to the forefront, and it was really like a really magical process for me because like I'm not a professional dancer, but I would often just like see choreography in my head and the associated like emotions with it, and I would just get very inspired when I was writing. And I felt like sometimes those things just came to me. I'm just like, how did I think of this? I don't even know.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I could literally just have a live with you just about Neil and Aisha and about Neil's struggles with his fathers. That could be a whole live, but I'm 11 minutes in, so I gotta move us. Speaking of Neil's father, trash garbage. Excuse me. Speaking of Neil's father, I loved Aisha's father. I was like, Maya, you're doing everything that needs to be done. The way I have railed against the depiction of YA parents on my YouTube channel is no secret. I just feel like part of it comes to lazy writing, where because and I get it, like dealing with parents is annoying because it's hard to have a teenage adventure if your parents are like, you can't go, you grounded, and then you actually gotta stay in your room. The story's over. So I get it, but I'm like, it still just is not realistic. Are we telling kids that in order to have adventures, they got to have no parents? That's not safe. That's not true. That's not real. So I loved the fact that Aisha's parents were very present in the novel, even when they weren't physically there. And I loved that Aisha was very clear about her love and respect for her father and her desire for him to be near. She wasn't trying to get away from him. She was like, I really wish he would come home. It wasn't like he wasn't cramping her style. How much thought, or what was the thought that went into deciding the nature of their relationship?
I did think about it a lot in terms of like what you mentioned before, of just like in YA, there is this weird thing where sometimes parents are just like not really that present. And in the story, there is that physically. But I felt like I wanted to incorporate that in a real way because, you know, lots of parents, they work really, really hard for their kids to be able to do what they're doing. So yeah. I kind of put that into like both of her parents, like her mother and her father. They have really busy jobs, and that's why they're not really that present. And even though like Aisha's mother was kind of like the other side of the coin in terms of like you know, being a good parent, Aisha does love both of her parents, and she sees value in both of them. Like, and like you said, like with her dad, he was basically just trying to protect her as much as he could, even, you know, from his wife. So, and the way that she decided to treat Aisha. So I did think very carefully about how I constructed her relationship with her parents, and wanted to kind of like realistically show that like she loves them deeply in very different ways, and they love her. Her mom at least tries to love her in her own way. But I did want that to be like a very like important part of the story for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about like her mom did try to love her. Like we see the gradients of love. You can love someone. I mean, and Toni Morrison says, I think it's at the end of The Bluest Eye, where she says, love is never any better than the lover. A stupid man will love stupidly. A mean man will love meanly. Like a broken man will love brokenly. Like that's all. We give all that we can, but all that we can does not mean that it's going to be good enough for the recipient. And we really see that with Aisha's mom, with Aisha's dad, like where the kind of love they're in a position to give because of their own mental health, because of their own aspirations, because of their own priorities. And I loved when her dad heard without her saying, I need you to be closer to me physically than you are. Like there's only so much that can be done with you away, in the way that he showed up for her physically and was like, I'm here for good, effective immediately. I am here. Because I'm a daddy's girl. And so when I see this large representation of garbage fathers, I'm just like, but they're not all trash. Like good dads are really amazing to have in a child's life. Like they protect you from so much physically, emotionally, psychologically. Like there's really no price that you can put on a good father. And watching him move through the book the way he did, be like trying to listen, trusting her, expressing disappointment when she broke that trust, and but still punishing her from a place of accountability, not from a place of wrath. Like it was so refreshing to see a more realistic, a more complex parent-child relationship. I really, really love that. I have 5 minutes left. Oh my gosh, what is time? So I wonder, were there any parts of the book, we're thinking now from the story as a beautiful narrative to the story as a product, were there any parts of the book that you had to fight to keep?
Yeah, so definitely in terms of this being a story that would be classified as like a sad girl story. Typically, you don't see sad girl stories that have Black main characters. It is more of like very exclusive type of thing where a lot of the time, the type of stories that I'm like, this story is classified as like, it's too slow, right? It's too quiet. And before I like did find like my agents, it was kind of like, it would be very similar feedback of just like, there's just not enough stakes. This is too quiet. Like, we don't want to hear about like these intricate like type of mental health issues are seen in different ways for different types of people. And I felt like that was probably something that I was getting frustrated with. I know that a lot of other authors who write in like a similar style, I've seen like talk about this often. So I would say that was probably one of the major things. But like once I did get my agents and like start working with my publisher, they were very open to keeping the story how it is. But that's definitely something that, you know, I'm querying more books, or sorry, going on sub with other stuff now. And, you know, sometimes people just don't think that's like what the market is. Difficult for stories like this. And it really is a fight to get them out there.
And that's unfortunate, but I think in every genre there is that thing where there's a push for the pacing to be whatever. There's a push for there to be some spark for like you said, what are the stakes? And I appreciated the stakes being the wellness of a Black girl. Those are the stakes. That's enough. Like that, those are the stakes. Her being able to remain in her body, that's the stake. It not happening again, that's the stake. Her eating, those are beautiful stakes, because that's every day for some people, and it's all they can do to eat the blueberry muffin. It's all they can do to eat the egg. It's all they can do to be in their body from moment to moment, being triggered when no one's even aware. Like those stakes, and that's what I mean when I say like the book was so realistic. It was achingly so. And I really, really appreciate you, you know, having the grit to advocate for Aisha, having the grit to advocate for Ollie, for Neil, and for their very complex stories and the way they move through the world without a lot of fanfare. And these are the kids who don't feel like they are story worthy, and you gave them a story that was so true to them. And that's part of the integrity that I referenced earlier, of you not stretching them beyond what they would really do, but saying, would Aisha make this change at this moment? No, she would not. So on we go. And if that is too slow, that's what it is. She's not ready yet. So we move on. And I so appreciate it. For what it's worth, from this reader writer, I think it was a beautifully honest story. I am grateful that you fought for it. The way that it shows up to me is perfectly on beat. I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay. Are there other questions that I wanted to ask you in the 3 minutes? No, I wanted to ask you. You've done several interviews at this point. Is there any question? Is there any comment that you have not been asked or prompted to, but that you want to make? Now is your time. Whatever you want to say.
I have to say, like most of the questions you ask me, like I had not heard before today. Like the way that you were discussing like the relationship between the characters, and like I just like I've been waiting for people to bring this stuff up. I'm just like, finally someone gets this story, is fully invested, and just is so excited about it. Like this really made my day. So you asked everything I wanted, and I really appreciate the fact that like you fully like saw this story, and it's really special. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay. Then all I have to say is that if you haven't read When It All Syncs Up, you know what you need to do. It does have an audiobook. So go get them. No excuses. Yes. If you have read When It All Syncs Up, then you need to watch Maya's socials on TikTok, on Twitter, on Instagram. It's Maya Ameyaw. The links are in the description of this video. And you, like me, you need to be watching for the companion novel Under the Lights, which is Ollie's story. She mentioned it in an interview on IG the other day, and I literally on my couch was like, because at first I was like, no, there's no other. But when you said yes, it's Ollie's story, not Ollie the cinnamon roll moving under these lights, about to be center stage, but also I was like, whoo, Ollie, are you okay? The question on the floor is, are you okay? Because we know you floating under the lights. We're all just as a community concerned. But you're going to see him through. So if you haven't read it, that's your assignment. If you have read it, wait with bated breath. We probably got a year on the clock. That is what it is. Just continue to reread When It All Syncs Up so you are ready for all
next spring.
Next spring. Okay, not quite a year. Like 8 months. Okay. So we'll just continue
pretty soon.
Yes. Maya's like, listen, don't worry. I got y'all. I cannot wait. Thank you so much, Maya, for this conversation. Is there anything else that we should be on the lookout for that you want to plug?
Not too much. Like I might be doing some more interviews on my YouTube channel, so definitely check that out. It's Maya Ameyaw on YouTube. So check out some of my past interviews and look out for some fun stuff.
Yeah, Ameyaw, I've been mispronouncing your name this entire time. I apologize.
That's fine.
I will add Maya's YouTube channel also in the description of this video. And she has some really cool author interviews. She has one with Brittany Lewis, with Hannah Sawyer. Like she has some really cool author interviews. So definitely with Lizelle. So definitely go and look at those interviews. Okay, it's 3:31. I have to release Maya now. So thank you all so much for coming. Make sure you click that like button if you liked this conversation. Share it on your socials. Definitely, if you can afford When It All Syncs Up, library checkouts also help the author. Get it however you get it. It's appreciated. Y'all have an amazing day. Thanks for watching on the replay. Anyone who is, take care. Bye-bye.